Sarah Martinez walked through the glass doors of Pinnacle Financial Corporation on a crisp Monday morning in October. Her modest black blazer and simple messenger bag made her look like any other new employee starting their first day. The 32-year-old woman had shoulder-length brown hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup that highlighted her natural features. Nothing about her appearance suggested the storm that was about to unfold in the corporate offices of downtown Chicago. The elevator dinged softly as it reached the 14th floor, where the regional sales department buzzed with Monday morning energy. Coffee cups clinked against desks, keyboards clicked in rhythmic patterns, and the hum of conversation filled the open-plan office space. Sarah stepped out, consulting a small piece of paper with directions to the human resources desk. Jessica Chen, a 28-year-old senior account manager, noticed the newcomer immediately. With her perfectly styled blonde highlights and designer handbag, Jessica had established herself as the unofficial queen of the 14th floor. She nudged her closest ally, Marcus Thompson, a tall man in his early 30s who wore expensive suits that matched his equally expensive ego. "Look what the cat dragged in," Jessica whispered, her voice dripping with disdain. "Another fresh face thinking she can climb the corporate ladder." Marcus smirked as he adjusted his silk tie. "She looks lost already. This should be interesting." The third member of their tight-knit group, Amanda Foster, looked up from her computer screen. Amanda was 26 and had joined the company straight from business school 2 years ago. She had learned quickly that aligning herself with Jessica and Marcus meant smoother sailing in the competitive world of corporate sales. "She's heading to HR," Amanda observed, watching Sarah navigate between the cubicles. "Probably another junior associate thinking she's going to revolutionize our department." Sarah approached the reception area where Linda Williams, the department's administrative assistant, greeted her with a warm smile. Linda had been with Pinnacle Financial for 15 years and had seen countless employees come and go. She immediately sensed something different about this particular newcomer. "You must be our new team member," Linda said, standing up from her desk. "I'm Linda Williams. How can I help you get settled?" "Thank you, Linda. I'm Sarah Martinez. I believe there should be some paperwork waiting for me." Sarah's voice was calm and professional, with a slight accent that suggested she might have grown up in the Southwest. As Linda shuffled through a stack of documents, Jessica decided to make her move. She strutted over to the reception area, her high heels clicking against the polished floor like a predator approaching its prey. "Well, well," Jessica said, extending her hand in a gesture that appeared friendly but carried an undertone of challenge. "I'm Jessica Chen, Senior Account Manager. You picked quite a week to start. We're in the middle of our biggest quarterly push." Sarah shook Jessica's hand firmly. "Nice to meet you, Jessica. I'm looking forward to contributing to the team's success." Contributing? Marcus had joined the conversation, his voice filled with barely concealed amusement. "That's optimistic. Most new hires spend their first few months just trying to figure out which bathroom is which." Amanda giggled from her nearby desk, not bothering to hide her entertainment at the exchange. She had witnessed this routine before. Jessica and Marcus had a particular talent for making new employees feel unwelcome, especially those who might pose any threat to their established hierarchy. Sarah maintained her composure, though Linda noticed a brief flash of something in her eyes. It wasn't fear or intimidation, but rather the look of someone who was carefully observing and filing away information for future reference. "I'm sure I'll figure out the important things quickly enough," Sarah replied evenly. "Important things," Jessica repeated, exchanging a meaningful glance with Marcus. "Like knowing your place in the pecking order. This isn't college, sweetheart. In the real world, experience matters more than enthusiasm." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of David Morrison, the department manager. David was a 45-year-old man who had worked his way up from the bottom of the corporate ladder over the past 20 years. He commanded respect through his knowledge and fair management style, though he sometimes struggled to control the more difficult personalities in his department. "I see you've met Sarah," David said, nodding toward the group. "Sarah, these are some of our top performers. Jessica handles our premium client accounts. Marcus specializes in corporate partnerships, and Amanda manages our digital marketing initiatives." "Impressive credentials," Sarah acknowledged, though her tone remained neutral. David turned to address Jessica and Marcus directly. "I trust you'll help Sarah get oriented. She'll be working closely with all of you on the Henderson Industries account." Jessica's smile faltered slightly. The Henderson Industries account was worth millions to the company and was typically reserved for the most experienced sales professionals. The idea that a brand new employee would be involved in such a high-stakes project was both puzzling and irritating. "Of course, David," Marcus said smoothly. "We're always happy to mentor new talent." After David left to attend a meeting, the atmosphere shifted noticeably. Jessica moved closer to Sarah, her friendly facade dropping like a discarded mask. "Let me give you some friendly advice," Jessica said, her voice low but audible enough for others nearby to hear. "The Henderson account is serious business. One mistake could cost this company millions and end careers. Maybe you should focus on smaller projects until you understand how things work around here." "I appreciate the concern," Sarah replied, "but I'm confident I can handle the responsibility." Amanda couldn't resist joining the conversation. "Confidence is great, but overconfidence can be dangerous. We've seen plenty of new hires crash and burn because they thought they knew better than people who've been here for years." As the morning progressed, the subtle harassment continued. When Sarah went to the break room for coffee, she found the machine empty and no one bothering to refill it despite several people having used it before her. When she asked about accessing certain computer systems, she was directed to outdated tutorials that wasted hours of her time. During the team meeting, Jessica made pointed comments about the importance of earning respect, rather than expecting it to be handed to you. Sarah endured each slight with remarkable patience, taking notes during meetings and asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of the business. Her responses often surprised even David, who began to wonder about her background. However, every display of competence only seemed to fuel Jessica's determination to put the newcomer in her place. By lunchtime, word had spread throughout the floor about the new employee, who was apparently being fast-tracked onto important projects. Some colleagues were curious, others were sympathetic, but the core group led by Jessica viewed Sarah as a threat to their established order. During the lunch break, Sarah sat alone in the company cafeteria, reviewing documents on her tablet while eating a simple sandwich. From across the room, Jessica, Marcus, and Amanda watched her with growing resentment. "There's something off about her," Amanda said, picking at her salad. "New employees don't usually get put on major accounts their first day." "Maybe she knows someone upstairs," Marcus suggested. "You know how it works. Connections matter more than competence sometimes." Jessica's jaw tightened. "Well, connections or not, she needs to learn that this floor has its own rules. If she thinks she can just waltz in here and start calling shots, she's got another thing coming." The afternoon brought new challenges for Sarah. When she needed to access client files, she was told the server was down. When she asked for copies of previous Henderson Industries reports, she was informed that they were confidential and required special clearance. Each obstacle was presented with apologetic smiles and promises to look into it. But Sarah began to recognize a pattern. The final incident of the day occurred during a conference call with a potential client. Sarah had been invited to observe and take notes, but when technical difficulties arose with the video connection, Jessica made a show of blaming it on all the new devices being added to our network. The comment was subtle enough to maintain plausible deniability, but clear enough to suggest that Sarah's presence was somehow responsible for the problem. As the day ended, Sarah packed her few belongings into her messenger bag while her colleagues prepared to leave. The office gradually emptied, with Jessica, Marcus, and Amanda making sure to walk past Sarah's temporary desk with deliberately loud conversations about their evening plans and their important client meetings the next day. "Some people just don't realize what they're getting into," Jessica said, just loud enough for Sarah to hear. "This job isn't for everyone." Sarah looked up from her desk, meeting Jessica's gaze directly. For a moment, the two women stared at each other, and Jessica felt an unexpected chill. There was something in Sarah's eyes that suggested depths that hadn't been explored yet. "You're right," Sarah said quietly. "This job definitely isn't for everyone." As Jessica, Marcus, and Amanda left for the evening, they felt satisfied with their first day's work. They had established their dominance and made it clear that Sarah would need to earn her place in their hierarchy. What they didn't know was that Sarah Martinez had spent the entire day not just observing their behavior, but carefully documenting it. That evening, Sarah sat in her modest hotel room, typing detailed notes into an encrypted laptop. Her observations went far beyond the personal slights she had endured. She had identified inefficiencies in workflow, gaps in client service, and concerning patterns in how certain accounts were being managed. Most importantly, she had gained insight into the culture and dynamics that would need to be addressed if the department was going to meet its potential. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "How was your first day?" RH. Sarah smiled as she typed her response. "Educational. The situation is worse than we thought, but manageable. We'll have preliminary report ready by Friday." The response came quickly. "Good. Remember, they don't know who you really are yet. Use that advantage wisely." Sarah closed her laptop and prepared for bed, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges. Jessica Chen and her allies had no idea that they had just spent an entire day bullying the woman who would soon have the power to reshape their professional lives entirely. Meanwhile, in her upscale apartment across town, Jessica was already planning the next day's strategy with Marcus over dinner. They discussed ways to make Sarah's second day even more challenging, confident that they could force her to quit or transfer to a different department. "She seems tougher than most," Marcus admitted, cutting into his steak. "But everyone has a breaking point." "Exactly," Jessica agreed, sipping her wine. "And we're very good at finding breaking points." Neither of them noticed the irony in their conversation. While they plotted to break down Sarah Martinez, they had no idea that they were about to discover their own breaking point in ways they never could have imagined. The stage was set for a confrontation that would expose not just the toxic culture of the 14th floor, but the true identity of the woman they had chosen as their target. Sarah Martinez was about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who appear the most harmless. As Chicago's skyline glittered in the distance, the city seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of the storm that was building within the corporate walls of Pinnacle Financial Corporation. Sarah arrived at the office the next morning 30 minutes early, hoping to use the quiet time to better understand the company's systems and prepare for the challenges she knew awaited her. The 14th floor was nearly empty, with only the hum of computers and the distant sound of the cleaning crew finishing their rounds. She settled at her assigned desk and began reviewing client files that she had finally managed to access through alternative channels. Her peaceful morning was interrupted when Jessica Chen emerged from the elevator, clearly surprised to find Sarah already at work. Jessica's surprise quickly transformed into suspicion as she noticed the documents spread across Sarah's desk. "You're here early?" Jessica observed, her tone carrying an accusatory edge. "Working overtime to catch up already?" "I prefer to prepare thoroughly," Sarah replied without looking up from her work. The Henderson Industries account requires careful attention to detail. Jessica moved closer, deliberately invading Sarah's personal space as she pretended to examine the documents. These are confidential client communications. How did you gain access to them? Through the proper channels. I spoke with IT support last night and explained my authorization needs. Sarah's voice remained calm, but she made a mental note of Jessica's immediate assumption that she was doing something wrong. The truth was that Sarah had contacted IT directly through channels that Jessica didn't know existed. Her security clearance levels were far higher than anything a new employee should possess, but the IT department had been instructed to provide her with whatever access she required without question. Marcus arrived shortly after, carrying 2 expensive coffee cups and handing one to Jessica. The gesture was clearly meant to exclude Sarah, who was drinking coffee from the break room machine. "Sarah's been busy," Jessica informed Marcus, her voice loud enough to carry to other early arrivals. "Apparently she managed to access confidential files on her second day. Impressive initiative." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his expression suggesting concern rather than admiration. "Really? That's interesting. Most new employees don't even know those files exist, let alone how to access them." "I read the employee handbook thoroughly," Sarah explained. "It outlined the proper procedures for requesting additional access privileges." Amanda arrived at that moment, catching the tail end of the conversation. She quickly assessed the situation and joined her allies in their subtle interrogation. "It's great that you're so eager," Amanda said with false sweetness. "But sometimes enthusiasm can be mistaken for overstepping boundaries. We wouldn't want anyone to get the wrong impression about your intentions." As the morning progressed, the harassment became more sophisticated and coordinated. When Sarah attended a departmental meeting, she found that her name had been mysteriously omitted from the agenda, despite David Morrison specifically asking her to present her preliminary observations about the Henderson account. Jessica smoothly covered the oversight by suggesting that Sarah might be more comfortable observing for now until she was fully oriented. During the presentation, Sarah noticed several concerning discrepancies in the financial projections that were being discussed. The numbers didn't align with industry standards she was familiar with, and some of the proposed strategies seemed outdated and potentially counterproductive. When she politely raised her hand to ask a clarifying question, Jessica interrupted before she could speak. "Sarah, I appreciate your eagerness to contribute, but these projections are based on years of market analysis and client relationships. Perhaps you could save your questions for after the meeting, when we can provide you with more background context." The dismissal was gentle but firm, and Sarah noticed approving nods from Marcus and Amanda. However, she also observed that David Morrison looked uncomfortable with the interruption, and 2 other senior colleagues exchanged meaningful glances that suggested they had noticed the inconsistencies as well. After the meeting, Sarah found herself surrounded by the 3 antagonists in what appeared to be a casual conversation, but felt more like an interrogation. "Your questions during the meeting were interesting," Marcus said, his tone suggesting anything but approval. "Do you have experience with accounts of this magnitude from your previous position?" Sarah had anticipated this question. Her official background showed employment at a smaller financial services firm in Phoenix, which would explain her knowledge, but not her apparent confidence in challenging established procedures. "I worked on several large corporate accounts in my previous role," she answered truthfully. "Different perspectives can sometimes reveal overlooked opportunities." Jessica laughed, but there was no warmth in the sound. "Opportunities? Or problems that don't actually exist? Sometimes outsiders think they see issues when they simply don't understand the full picture." "Speaking of the full picture," Amanda added, "we've been wondering about your background. Your resume shows solid experience, but you seem to know more about high-level financial strategy than most people at your stated experience level." Sarah recognized the fishing expedition for what it was. They were trying to find inconsistencies in her story that they could use against her. She maintained her composure while providing answers that were accurate but incomplete. "I've always been interested in the broader aspects of corporate finance," she said. "I spent considerable time studying advanced strategies during my MBA program, and I've maintained that interest through continuing education." The afternoon brought a new challenge when Sarah discovered that her access to the Henderson Industries client portal had been revoked. When she contacted IT support, she was told that there had been security concerns raised about her account and that the issue was being investigated. The timing was suspicious, especially since she had been using the system without problems that morning. Sarah's response surprised her tormentors. Instead of becoming frustrated or demanding explanations, she simply began working on alternative approaches to gather the information she needed. Her calm persistence in the face of obvious sabotage was unsettling to Jessica, who had expected her to either lose her temper or appear incompetent in front of David Morrison. The situation escalated further when David announced that he needed someone to attend a client dinner with Henderson Industries executives that evening. It was exactly the kind of high-profile opportunity that Jessica considered her territory, and she immediately volunteered her services. "Actually," David said, consulting his notes, "I think Sarah should attend. Fresh eyes on the account might provide valuable insights." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's face flushed red, and Marcus looked as though he had been physically slapped. Amanda appeared confused, unable to understand why a second-day employee was being given such significant responsibilities. "David," Jessica said carefully, "are you sure that's wise? Sarah hasn't even completed her orientation yet. This dinner could determine the future of our entire relationship with Henderson Industries, which is exactly why I want someone there who can provide an objective assessment of our current approach," David replied firmly. "Sarah, the dinner is at the Metropolitan Club at 7 o'clock. Business formal attire." After David left, the three colleagues converged on Sarah with barely concealed hostility. "Congratulations," Jessica said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I hope you realize what you've gotten yourself into. Richard Henderson doesn't tolerate incompetence, and he has a particular dislike for people who waste his time." Marcus leaned against Sarah's desk, his proximity clearly meant to intimidate. "Henderson Industries represents 40% of our department's revenue. If you say or do anything that jeopardizes that relationship, it won't just be your career on the line." Amanda nodded in agreement. "Maybe you should reconsider. It might be better to suggest that someone with more experience handle this meeting. We wouldn't want you to be set up for failure." Sarah looked up at the three faces surrounding her desk and saw the culmination of their frustration and resentment. They had spent 2 days trying to undermine her confidence and position, and now they were faced with the reality that their efforts had not only failed, but seemed to have backfired entirely. "I appreciate your concerns," Sarah said quietly, "but I'm confident I can handle the responsibility." That evening, Sarah arrived at the Metropolitan Club 15 minutes early. Dressed in an elegant navy blue suit that transformed her understated appearance into something much more authoritative. The exclusive venue was exactly what she had expected: dark wood paneling, leather furniture, and an atmosphere of old-money sophistication. Richard Henderson was already seated at a corner table when she arrived. He was a distinguished man in his early 60s, with silver hair and intelligent eyes that missed very little. As Sarah approached the table, she noticed his surprised expression, followed by what appeared to be recognition. "Ms. Martinez," he said, standing to greet her. "This is unexpected." "Mr. Henderson," Sarah replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Thank you for making time for this meeting." The dinner conversation that followed would have astonished anyone from the 14th floor who witnessed it. Instead of the nervous fumbling that Jessica had predicted, Sarah demonstrated a comprehensive understanding of Henderson Industries' business challenges and market position. She asked insightful questions about their expansion plans and offered thoughtful observations about potential risks and opportunities. More significantly, Richard Henderson treated her not as a junior employee being given a test run, but as an equal whose opinions carried weight. Their discussion ranged from specific account details to broader industry trends, and Henderson seemed genuinely engaged with Sarah's perspectives. "Your analysis of our Southeast expansion challenges is remarkably accurate," Henderson said over dessert. "Most of our account representatives focus on the revenue potential without considering the infrastructure requirements. Infrastructure is often the determining factor in successful expansion," Sarah agreed. "The initial investment may be higher, but the long-term stability creates more sustainable growth." Henderson studied her carefully. "May I ask about your background? Your insights suggest experience beyond what I would expect from someone new to Pinnacle Financial." Sarah chose her words carefully. "I've had the opportunity to work on various types of corporate development projects. Different perspectives often reveal patterns that might not be obvious from within a single organization." When the dinner ended, Henderson walked Sarah to the valet station where their cars were being retrieved. "This has been one of the most productive client meetings I've had in years," Henderson said. "I look forward to working with you more closely on our account." As Sarah drove back to her hotel, she reflected on the evening's success and the challenges that awaited her tomorrow. She knew that her performance at the dinner would only intensify Jessica's hostility, especially once Henderson's positive feedback reached David Morrison. Her phone buzzed with a text message. "How did the Henderson dinner go? RH." Sarah smiled as she replied, "Better than expected. The account has significant potential that's being underutilized. We'll include detailed recommendations in Friday's report." "Excellent. Be prepared for increased resistance. They're starting to ask questions about your background." Sarah's expression grew more serious as she typed her response. "Understood. How much longer do you want me to maintain the cover?" "Until Friday's board meeting. After that, we proceed to Phase 2. Meanwhile, back at Pinnacle Financial, Jessica Chen sat in her office reviewing the Henderson Industries account files. She had spent the evening researching Sarah Martinez, trying to find information that might explain her rapid advancement and obvious knowledge of high-level business strategy. The background check had revealed nothing beyond the basic employment history and educational credentials that had already been verified. What troubled Jessica most was not what she had found, but what she hadn't found. For someone with Sarah's apparent expertise and confidence, her digital footprint was surprisingly limited. Her previous employer confirmed her employment and spoke positively about her performance, but there were gaps in the timeline that seemed inconsistent with someone building a traditional corporate career. Jessica's investigation was interrupted by a phone call from Marcus, who had his own concerning observations to report. "I talked to someone I know in IT," Marcus said without preamble. "Sarah's security clearance levels are higher than ours, significantly higher." "That's impossible," Jessica replied. "She's been here 2 days." "That's what I thought, but my contact confirmed it. He couldn't tell me how high, but he said her access privileges are executive level." "Jessica, no new employee gets executive level access." "Something's not right about this whole situation." After ending the call, Jessica stared out her office window at the city lights below. Her instincts told her that Sarah Martinez was not who she appeared to be, but she couldn't determine what the truth might be. What she did know was that Sarah represented a threat to everything Jessica had worked to build at Pinnacle Financial. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Jessica was determined to find the truth about Sarah Martinez, no matter what it took. She had no idea that the truth was far more threatening to her position than anything she could possibly imagine. As the city settled into evening quiet, 2 very different plans were taking shape. Sarah Martinez was preparing for the final phase of her mission, while Jessica Chen was planning one last desperate attempt to destroy the woman she saw as an intruder in her carefully constructed world. The collision between these two forces would reshape everything on the 14th floor of Pinnacle Financial Corporation, and the consequences would reach far beyond what anyone currently employed there could anticipate. Friday morning arrived with an unusual tension in the air at Pinnacle Financial Corporation. Word had somehow spread throughout the building that there would be an important announcement from the executive floor, though no one seemed to know the specific details. Employees huddled in small groups, speculating about everything from merger announcements to layoffs. On the 14th floor, Jessica Chen arrived early with dark circles under her eyes. The result of 3 sleepless nights spent investigating Sarah Martinez. Her research had revealed nothing concrete, but her instincts screamed that something major was about to happen. She had convinced Marcus and Amanda to arrive early as well, hoping to corner Sarah before the workday officially began. However, Sarah's desk was empty when they arrived, and it remained empty as the morning progressed. Her absence only heightened the sense of unease that had been building throughout the week. David Morrison called an emergency department meeting at 10 o'clock, his expression uncharacteristically serious as he addressed the assembled staff. His usual easy demeanor had been replaced by something that looked almost like nervousness. "I need everyone to attend the main conference room on the executive floor at 11 o'clock, David announced. "There will be a presentation from corporate leadership regarding changes in our departmental structure." The words sent a chill through the room. Changes in departmental structure typically meant reorganization, and reorganization usually meant someone was losing their job. Jessica felt her carefully constructed world beginning to shift beneath her feet. "What kind of changes?" Marcus asked, voicing the question that everyone was thinking. "I'll let the executives explain the details," David replied, but his evasive answer only increased the anxiety in the room. As the staff filed toward the elevators, Jessica noticed that Sarah Martinez was still nowhere to be seen. The absence felt ominous, as though a critical piece of the puzzle was missing. The executive conference room on the 22nd floor was a monument to corporate power. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of downtown Chicago, while a massive mahogany table dominated the center of the room. Oil paintings of the company's founding fathers watched over the proceedings from ornate frames. The regional sales department staff filled only a portion of the available seats, making them feel smaller and more vulnerable in the intimidating space. Jessica chose a seat near the back, hoping to observe without drawing attention to herself. At precisely 11 o'clock, the conference room doors opened and several senior executives entered. Jessica recognized most of them from company newsletters and annual meetings. But her attention was immediately drawn to a woman who walked confidently behind the others. It was Sarah Martinez, but she was transformed. Gone was the modest blazer and simple messenger bag. Instead, she wore an impeccably tailored charcoal gray suit that spoke of executive authority. Her hair was styled differently, pulled back in a sophisticated chignon that emphasized her sharp features. Most striking of all was her demeanor. The quiet, almost deferential woman they had spent a week tormenting had been replaced by someone who radiated command presence. The shock of recognition rippled through the 14th floor staff like an electric current. Jessica felt her stomach drop as the implications began to dawn on her. Marcus gripped the armrests of his chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Amanda stared with her mouth slightly open, unable to process what she was seeing. Robert Harrison, the chief executive officer of Pinnacle Financial Corporation, stepped to the front of the room. He was a distinguished man in his late 50s who commanded respect throughout the financial industry. His presence alone was enough to ensure absolute silence from the assembled employees. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Harrison began. "I want to introduce you to someone who will be playing a crucial role in the future of our regional sales department." He gestured toward Sarah, who stepped forward with the confidence of someone accustomed to addressing rooms full of powerful people. "This is Admiral Sarah Martinez," Harrison continued, and the title hit the room like a thunderclap. Admiral Martinez recently retired from the United States Navy after 20 years of distinguished service, including 5 years as Admiral of Fleet Operations for the Pacific Command. She has agreed to join Pinnacle Financial as our new Chief Operations Officer and will be implementing comprehensive reforms throughout our regional divisions. The silence in the room was deafening. Jessica felt as though she couldn't breathe. Admiral. The woman they had been bullying, dismissing, and attempting to sabotage was not just a senior executive, but someone who had commanded entire naval fleets. Someone who had held authority over thousands of people and billion-dollar military operations. Sarah stepped forward to address the room, her voice carrying the clear, authoritative tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Over the past week," she began, "I have been conducting what we call in the military a ground truth assessment of this department. I've observed your operations, reviewed your procedures, and experienced your workplace culture firsthand." Her eyes swept across the room, pausing briefly on Jessica, Marcus, and Amanda. The look was not angry or vindictive, but rather the calm, analytical gaze of someone who had identified problems that needed to be addressed. "What I've discovered is a department with tremendous potential that is being undermined by inefficient processes, outdated strategies, and most critically, a toxic workplace culture that prevents optimal performance and drives away talent." Jessica felt her face burning with shame and fear. Every interaction from the past week was suddenly recontextualized. Sarah had not been a victim of their bullying. She had been a superior officer observing their behavior while they unknowingly destroyed their own careers. Sarah continued her presentation with military precision. The Henderson Industries account, which represents a significant portion of this department's revenue, is being mismanaged. The financial projections I reviewed contain several critical errors that could result in substantial losses if not corrected immediately. She activated a presentation screen that displayed detailed analysis of the account, including the discrepancies she had identified during her first departmental meeting. The corrections were comprehensive and would clearly result in improved performance and client satisfaction. "More concerning than the operational issues," Sarah continued, "are the systematic barriers to effective communication and collaboration that I observed. New team members are subjected to hostile treatment designed to establish dominance hierarchies rather than foster productive integration. Information is withheld rather than shared, creating inefficiencies and missed opportunities." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair, realizing that every act of sabotage they had committed against Sarah had been carefully documented and analyzed. "These behaviors are not just unprofessional," Sarah said, her voice taking on a harder edge. "They are counterproductive to the mission of this organization and represent a fundamental failure of leadership that will be addressed immediately." Robert Harrison stepped forward again. "Admiral Martinez has full authority to implement whatever changes she deems necessary to optimize departmental performance. This includes restructuring teams, reassigning responsibilities, and making personnel decisions as required." The implications were clear. Sarah Martinez now had the power to fire anyone in the room, and everyone knew that Jessica, Marcus, and Amanda had spent the week providing her with compelling reasons to do exactly that. David Morrison, who had been noticeably quiet throughout the presentation, looked as though he had aged several years in the span of an hour. His management of the department had been indirectly but clearly criticized, and his future with the company was now uncertain. Sarah addressed the room once more. "I want to be clear about my expectations going forward. This department will operate according to principles of mutual respect, collaborative problem-solving, and commitment to excellence. Anyone who cannot adapt to these standards will find alternative employment opportunities elsewhere." After the formal presentation ended, the staff was dismissed back to their floor, but Jessica, Marcus, and Amanda were asked to remain behind. The three of them sat in the enormous conference room, dwarfed by its grandeur and the magnitude of their situation. Sarah approached them calmly, carrying a thick folder that Jessica assumed contained documentation of their behavior throughout the week. "I want to speak with each of you individually," Sarah said. "Jessica, let's start with you." Marcus and Amanda were escorted to a smaller conference room to wait, leaving Jessica alone with the woman she had spent a week trying to destroy. The irony was not lost on her that she was now the one feeling intimidated and uncertain. "Jessica," Sarah began, settling into the chair across from her, "I'm going to be direct. Your behavior this week was unprofessional, counterproductive, and created a hostile work environment. You attempted to sabotage my work, undermine my credibility, and exclude me from important communications." Jessica opened her mouth to defend herself, but Sarah raised a hand to stop her. "However," Sarah continued, "I also observed that you possess strong analytical skills and detailed knowledge of client relationships that could be valuable assets to this organization. The question is whether you can channel those abilities in a constructive direction." The admission surprised Jessica. She had expected immediate termination, not acknowledgement of her professional competencies. "I'm offering you a choice," Sarah said. "You can embrace the changes we're implementing, contribute to a more collaborative and effective team culture, and continue your career with Pinnacle Financial. Or you can resist these changes and find yourself seeking employment elsewhere. The decision is entirely yours." Jessica stared at the woman she had so dramatically underestimated. Sarah Martinez was offering her redemption rather than revenge, professional development rather than professional destruction. "I choose to embrace the changes," Jessica said quietly. "And I apologize for my behavior this week. I was wrong, and I understand that now." Sarah nodded. "Apologies are a good start, but actions will determine outcomes. You'll be working directly with me on restructuring the Henderson Industries account. I expect excellence, collaboration, and absolute professionalism." The conversations with Marcus and Amanda followed similar patterns. Both were offered opportunities to reform their behavior and contribute positively to the department, though it was made clear that their past actions had been noted and that any future problems would result in immediate termination. Over the following weeks, the transformation of the regional sales department was remarkable. Under Sarah's leadership, communication improved dramatically, client satisfaction increased measurably, and the toxic culture that had previously defined the workplace was replaced by one focused on mutual support and shared success. Jessica, Marcus, and Amanda all chose to embrace the changes, though the transition was challenging for each of them. Jessica discovered that collaboration produced better results than competition, and her analytical skills flourished when applied to genuine problem-solving rather than workplace politics. Marcus learned to mentor newer employees rather than intimidate them, finding unexpected satisfaction in helping others succeed. Amanda channeled her intelligence into innovative marketing strategies that benefited the entire team. David Morrison was reassigned to a different department, a lateral move that preserved his employment while acknowledging the need for fresh leadership. He handled the transition gracefully and privately admitted to colleagues that the department needed exactly the kind of strong leadership that Sarah provided. The Henderson Industries account became a showcase for the department's improved capabilities. Richard Henderson was so impressed with the enhanced service and strategic insights that he increased his company's business with Pinnacle Financial by 30% within 6 months. 6 months later, Jessica found herself in Sarah's office for her performance review. The space had been completely transformed from David's cluttered and informal setup into a model of military efficiency and professional focus. "Your progress has been exceptional," Sarah told her. "You've become exactly the kind of leader this department needs." Jessica reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point. "I keep thinking about that first week," she admitted. "I'm embarrassed by how I behaved, but I'm grateful for how you handled the situation." Sarah leaned back in her chair. In the military, we have a saying, leadership is not about being in charge. Leadership is about taking care of those in your charge. You were protecting what you thought was your territory, but you were doing it in a way that hurt the organization and the people around you. How did you stay so calm during that week? Jessica asked. I was actively trying to sabotage you, and you never lost your composure, Sarah smiled. When you've commanded naval operations during international crises, workplace politics seem relatively manageable. Plus, I knew that your behavior was ultimately hurting you more than it was hurting me. I was more interested in understanding why you felt the need to act that way than in retaliating against you. As Jessica left the office that day, she reflected on the profound changes in her professional life. The woman she had tried to bully had become her mentor, and the department she had tried to protect through intimidation had become genuinely stronger through collaboration. The story of Sarah Martinez became legendary within Pinnacle Financial Corporation. New employees were told about the Admiral, who had spent a week being bullied while quietly documenting everything she needed to transform the department. It served as both a cautionary tale about workplace behavior and an inspiring example of leadership under pressure. For Sarah herself, the experience confirmed her belief that most workplace problems stemmed from poor leadership rather than bad people. Given the right guidance and expectations, even the most difficult employees could become valuable contributors to their organization's success. The woman they had set out to bully had indeed been the Admiral in command, and her response to their attacks had demonstrated the kind of leadership that transforms organizations and changes lives. In trying to tear her down, they had unknowingly provided her with exactly the information she needed to build them all back up into something better than they had ever imagined they could be.